to the Last Day series. If you haven't seen them yet, there are 2 prologues to this series leading into it anyway. And going forward, I wanted to introduce why I'm going to take a specifically biblical stance. 3/4 or more of the Earth's population believe that there is a creator, that there is a greater power. There's just consensus across faith that humanity didn't come to be here by themselves. It wasn't some spontaneous event. We've been created, we've been designed. And so actually then a lot of the debate about amongst humanity is now which faith is real, which faith is true. For the next couple of episodes, I'm going to introduce and explain why I personally believe that the biblical view is true. For this morning, we're going to discuss witnesses and the value of witnesses. If you had to go to a court of law and there was a crime being charged and a judge or a jury is busy adjudicating a case, amongst various items of elements would be witnesses. First-hand eyewitnesses who actually witnessed what happened. And the more witnesses testify in that case, they will bring clarity to the overall picture. So the judge wasn't there, the jury were not there on the day that the events took place, but those eyewitnesses were. And so with key questions and leading, those witnesses will recount their story and their narrative of what they experienced, of what they saw. So there might be fractional, minor differences between each story, but the reality is that the overarching story is the same. And you very quickly start to see if it is not, and who is potentially not telling the truth or the full truth. Let's say someone comes to you again, a complete stranger, and says, you know, I saw a man climb up to 30,000 feet in an aeroplane, jump out without a parachute, and landed safely on the ground without being hurt whatsoever. You know, most of us would think, no man, you're mad. That is completely impossible. But the person says, no, but I was there. I was on the ground. I actually saw this happen. I mean, this is really happened. This is the story. You think like, no, I mean, I know you sound convincing. I know you look convincing, but someone jumping out of a plane on purpose, without a parachute, on purpose, and then still landing on the ground, something is very odd here. But now, what if tomorrow you encounter somebody completely different who tells you the same story? And you go like, wow, okay, that's strange. Someone yesterday told me the story. I didn't believe them yesterday. Now here's someone else who hasn't related. They don't know each other. And they're telling me the same story. Well, maybe then you would start to wonder. There must be something to the story. Maybe I don't understand the full story, but there's something to the story. And then what about the day after or the week after? 3, 4, 5 people come to you, all unrelated. They don't know each other. You just pass them in the supermarket, or you pass them in the parking lot at school, wherever you go, at work, and you get just completely random eyewitness accounts of someone jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and landing safely on the ground. Suddenly, intrinsically, we're not even talking statistics and probability and mathematics or science or biology. We're not trying to prove any evidence here. Just from pure eyewitness accounts. Suddenly you're in a bracket that starts to say, you're in a position, you're in a mindset now, after those 4, 5, 6 engagements, of saying, there's something to the story. Maybe I should check it out. Okay. And so that's pretty much what I'm bringing you to today is, what if 44 people from different time periods, so completely impossible of engaging with each other, all had a common story about a creator? Wouldn't that get your attention? I mean, if 4, 5, 6 people, just half a dozen people, could get your attention to think about a man jumping out of an airplane without a parachute and landing safely, which is it's a completely illogical story. Anyone falling from 30,000 feet is going to lose their lives, you know. But you would start to believe half a dozen people, because intrinsically, without really even processing deeply, you'd have to start to believe them. They're random. They didn't contrive together to make up the story just to deceive you. It's not like you're on candid camera and it's all happening at the same time and 6 people all at the same time contrive a story. Okay. Intrinsically, you understand that those eyewitnesses are telling you something that you have to go check out. You have to go and just sort of take that final step of believing the credibility and believing the story 100%. Right. So here I am telling you, here's 44 people across thousands of years, not having the opportunity of knowing each other, telling the same story about a creator who made humanity. It sounds ludicrous, it sounds irrational, but how is it possible that 44 eyewitnesses, at least, there's far more, okay, I'm using that number 44 on purpose. How is it possible that 44 eyewitnesses who didn't know each other, impossible to know each other, can be having the same thread of a story? There must be something to it. And that is exactly how the Bible is compiled. 44 different authors. Some had the opportunity of knowing each other. They were around about the same time periods, okay? But we're talking about maybe half a dozen. The rest not. The rest from different time periods. There might be clusters together within sort of 50 years or 60 years. But how can 44 authors across millennia contrive to agree a story? The likelihood is very low, which means the reality of the story being true is very high. So again, we start to understand the value of testimony. Another one might be something like the Holocaust. Now, the Holocaust is an extremely emotive piece of human history. It's very emotive. Gosh, I mean, I don't want to get into, what a terrible time in human history. It's really terrible. But you weren't there and I wasn't there. How do we know it happened? How do we know? Well, again, number one, I think just the last surviving members of that generation who were in the concentration camps are still with us today. And they are still eyewitnesses of what happened. But back then, in those days, there were many eyewitnesses who were actually rescued out of those concentration camps, and they had a lot of stories to tell. So we can't doubt. And then there was a whole lot of other evidence. The soldiers came and they saw the concentration camps, many concentration camps, and there was photographs taken and lots of evidence taken. Okay, but if we had none of that other evidence, and all we had was the voice of the victims, it would still be 100% verifiably true that the Holocaust happened. And we would somehow intrinsically, we just know that we can believe people and their stories. Let's talk about life after death. I know a story of a philosophy doctorate who set out to prove that there is no life after death. But right in his framework early on, he completely excluded near-death experiences and post-death experiences. He just completely excluded them from consideration. And so his conclusion was true, there is no life after death. Because he just cut off a complete set of data and variables from consideration. His conclusion would have been completely different if he encountered the many tens of thousands of people, eyewitnesses, no one knowing each other necessarily, from across different countries, different cultures, different languages, all having these experiences, near-death or post-death experiences, and coming back to life again with these stories. Now, if it was just one person, we'd think, we're glad you're back. Glad we've got you with us again. We're very happy about that, but we can't pin the story that you're telling us. This just sounds a bit fanciful. It sounds a bit strange. But because we have so many eyewitnesses, so many people across the world, across time, have had these experiences, we have to realize, without any other evidence, that there is life after death. There are just too many eyewitnesses about this. Okay, so we don't question that or doubt that. We understand that these things are realities, sort of outside of our time-space reality. But one day we will all experience this reality once we depart this time-space.